Hello, good morning, and I have a wonderful treat for you. I have a guest today on the show, Lee Atherton, and I know she's Coach Rev. That most
Coach
people,
Rev.
Coach Rev, yes. Not to bore you with details, we'll get the conversation going. Hello, Lee.
Hello and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or evening whenever you're listening, right? To
Yes,
all of
yes,
your folks who are tuning in.
yes. It's really nice to see you again. In our last conversation, we talked about something that most people try to avoid, the topic of death and,
A big
dying. And can you give us a background as to what you do?
Yes, thank you. I am an end of life expert. I have spent over 15 years as a hospice chaplain and spending time with people who are planning for end of life, nearing the end of their life, and then following up with being able to officiate a service, a funeral, or a memorial service, and then supporting their loved ones in grief. So that whole journey of dying and death.
Why is it so important? As we're talking, we realize, a lot of people, this is a mystery, right?
Mm.
It's a topic that is avoided at all costs. And sometimes when it comes up, we're all surprised by,
Mhm.
things happening to certain people that we know. And
Yes.
our unprepared, I want to say, reactions to it shows that we don't understand enough about it. Can you enlighten us about what your experiences have been?
Yes. I think my first experience as a young adult with death was my mom being diagnosed with cancer. And I had young children at the time. And I remember talking to my pastor, how do I prepare my kids for their grandmother's death? And he said, everyone tries to keep quiet about dying and death, but
Right,
do the opposite. Take your kids when someone in the church, because we were involved in a community, when someone dies, go to their wake, bring the kids,
right,
even if they don't know the person. So it starts to become something that it's not terrifying. And then when it comes to be their grandmother, it won't be something brand new. And so I did that and got my kids used to the idea that people die and it's sad, but it's okay to talk about, to be visiting with them. And I really became aware of how much we just try to ignore it
right,
and pretend that death isn't there. But you
right.
know what? We can't. It's going to happen.
What is the fear surrounding it? Or
Oh,
what do you think makes people shy away from, getting an understanding of what is happening?
I think, and my experience has shown me that at some point, funeral homes came into the way of death.
Right,
And when someone died, the body was taken out of the home. It wasn't just, oh, Aunt Susie died and her body is here and we go and we be in the space with that body and with death. And so kids, and I think it goes back to when we were children, we are hidden from it. We don't go to the funeral. We don't know what happened to this body that disappeared, or even if we saw the body. And so that unknowing,
right.
as a child, we begin to imagine.
I can tell you, in my country in Ghana, the opposite happens, right? They bring the body home and they lay the body in state, we say, and then people come around and walk around it and stuff. Yes, there are some people who may be excluded from viewing the body, like pregnant women or who was someone who was just giving birth. But there's
Yeah.
still some fear around it. You know, the spirit, the ghost, all those things come into
Oh,
play,
yes.
right?
We mentioned that when we talked before, and
Right,
I'm intrigued often by how people interpret that. What happens to our spirit
right.
when someone dies?
Would you shed some light on some of the conversations that you've had with folks, transitioning and the families that you work with?
Yes, it always comes up in conversation in some form. We often see when someone is actively dying, even if they haven't been responsive, some indication that perhaps they're seeing something or someone,
Right,
looking off to a corner of the room or making comments about the people who are there, who those of us who are living aren't seeing. So it raises that question about what are they seeing as they're breathing their last? Some people in the scientific world or the psychology world will say, it's all the way the neurons are firing and our brain is shutting down and all of that. Others will say, "Oh, my dad is seeing my mom who died a long time ago," or the stories of seeing a bright light. That's when someone is actively dying. But I also have heard so many stories about, oh, my mom came to visit me in a hummingbird that kept coming by.
when we talk about living life's final chapter,
Mm.
what are some of it's difficult to share, because it's an isolated incident, right? But what should we be aware of
When you say we, who are the we that you're thinking about?
as living, because what we want to do is to understand what it is, this process of dying,
Yeah.
right? Some people think it's the final chapter. We all have beliefs around it.
Hmm.
It might, once we die, that's it. Some people
Right.
believe we move on to some other planes. Some people believe, I don't know, we move into another phase of life, right?
Right.
So the reason why I'm trying to bring this up is what should we prepare for? Why is it important for us to be aware,
Yeah.
as we get in? And we can't all grow old, right?
Right.
Some people die young, some people die much older than we expect, etc.
Right.
And so it's
Yeah.
the steps to it, right?
This,
What should we
right.
be aware of?
So I think of it as a process. You and I, we're sitting here, we're healthy, we're not looking at dying in the next few days or weeks, right?
Fingers crossed.
Right. And so for people like you and me, it's taking time to think about what would end of life look like for me? What do you want to die in a hospital with all the machines and being hooked up? Do you want to die at your home? Not that we can all choose,
Right.
but in a perfect world, what would it look like? What would it be like for you? For me, I would love to die in my home, surrounded by my family, with the shades open, the windows open if it's warm weather. I want to hear the laughter around me. I want to have medication so that I'm not in intense pain. And then I know that for me, what happens after I die, I've chosen a funeral home. I know that I want a green burial. I've talked about what pieces I would want in my funeral service. So that's me, right? What are the things that we can think about? What, not just often at end of life, we think about having a will. Who's going to inherit my things?
Right.
or having a healthcare proxy, the person who will make healthcare decisions for us. But what are those healthcare
Good.
choices that we want? Do you
So,
want CPR? Do you want a feeding tube?
so in
So
other words, other people should prepare for the inevitable, right? This is going to happen one way or the other, sooner or later, right? So
right,
we should all be conscious of the choices, well, because we might not have the opportunity to make that decision at that time and say, this is what I want, right? So,
right,
okay.
right. There's a story of a young man that I share in my workshop, my Five Wishes workshop, which is planning for end of life. The story of a young man who was an extreme sports enthusiast. He was in his 20s. No thought of end of life coming for him, but he was in a skiing accident where he broke his neck. He became a quadriplegic, and he had had a head injury that he was put into a medically induced coma while his brain recovered from that traumatic injury. He had been put on life support.
Mhm.
His family had been told he will never come off of life support. Without it, he will die. And his family had a tough decision to make. And they wrestled with, what should we do? Do we let him live in this state? The medical team had said he'll always be institutionalized in a long-term care facility. He will never move his hands, his legs ever again. He'll always be kept alive mechanically. And his family, his mom and his dad and his sister, back and forth about what do we do. And the doctor said to them, we can take him out of the medically induced coma and you can have a conversation with him and ask what his wishes are. And they were able to do that. And when he was told that he would never move again, that he would never hold his niece or nephew, his sister was pregnant at the time, he would never run or play or do any of these sports again. He said, for me, that's not living. I don't want to live that way. And he helped his family make that choice to take him off of life support. What a gift we can give when we're able to say those things
Things
when we're
exactly.
healthy,
Right.
when we're not in the midst of that emotional chaos and trauma. We don't want to make decisions at those times.
No. So it's best for everyone involved, right? Because it's not only just
Yeah.
about us.
Right,
We have loved ones that also need to have some comfort in the decisions that they have to make. And
right.
if we help them along way before the inevitable comes, then it's an easier journey for everybody.
For everyone. Yes, yes. And when we can take the time to think about what really matters to us as unique individuals, what are our values? So for another person in that instance, they might say, "Oh, as long as my mind is healthy and I can talk and interact with people,
Right,
for me, that's living."
right,
Then you look at the cost of being in long-term care for however long those
exactly.
machines keep you alive. For some people, that economic justice becomes an issue. We're not going to think of that in the midst of right
A
after an
crisis,
accident.
right. Now, besides your five wishes, you also have death over dinner and drinks. Can you?
Right?
That sounds like fun. I don't know. Serious topic, but a fun way to talk about it.
Exactly. And it is, whether it's dinner or drinks, when I do it in person, it's dinner at somebody's home. And I've done it virtually, and that's when we have death over drinks. So, grab your glass of wine and put your feet up. Really informal.
Right.
Um, casual where I raise questions. Like, what if that was you
Right.
who was in that situation? Simple questions, hard questions, but just an opportunity to start the conversation.
Mhm.
Uh,
What do you typically talk about? I'm curious.
yeah, all sorts of things. From how do I take care of my aging parent and help them make plans for, anything from leaving the home that they were a part of because they can't take care of themselves anymore,
Mhm.
to those crisis moments. What if I were in an accident? At what point, because it's a whole stream of where am I at medically if I'm in an accident, and at what point would I say pull the plug?
Right.
We talk about pain medication at end of life, which to me is an interesting one to hear different people's perspectives. Do you want the medication so that you have no pain? But then you probably won't be interacting with folks,
Right.
uh, or you'll deal with all the pain so that you can be fully awake and alert. Um, we talk about death's impact on those who are left behind, whether it's a spouse who died or a child, parent when a child is young. It's a wide range.
This is it's an emotional discussion, right? Um,
Yeah.
it is, and it's a deep one. It's not something we just doing over drinks and dinner, right?
Right. And I think the title Death Over Dinner or Death Over Drinks kind of catches your attention,
Right.
number one.
Right.
But then hopefully we'll put people at a little bit of ease
Mhm.
instead of, oh, come to the funeral home and sit in this somber area with dim lights and let's talk about death. Uh, because how we approach the conversation, the energy that we have
Right.
within and without helps to make a conversation.
Pretty interesting. Um, who knows? One of these days I'll join the, dinner or drinks conversation and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Um, as I mentioned, I haven't talked about this topic a lot in my podcast. I've done probably a couple, and
Yeah.
one was if you had one day to live, what choices would we make? Because it puts things in perspective for us, right?
Right.
Right. Um, what do you think shifts for people when they realize that this is it?
Ah, it really does put things in perspective. And I haven't thought quite so much about if you have one day left to live, but if you've been given that terminal diagnosis, you've
Right,
got 3 months, 6 months, how will you live the time that you have now?
right,
Right. And
right.
and it makes us aware of where are we wasting time in life?
Exactly.
We can stop and think about what are our priorities? And are we doing the things that we need to do so that we're honoring those?
Yeah,
One of the ones I that comes up often is those of us folks in middle age, getting a little bit older perhaps, thinking about grandchildren and saying, I want to be there for my grandkids. I want to be able to play with them. I want to watch them, in their school plays or watch them get married. Awesome.
right.
That is great. How are you living today? Are you being healthy, taking care of your body so you can make sure you're there for them?
And the quality of life, really.
Oh, and quality.
Because sometimes we focus so much on work because
Yes,
we don't see an ending to or how we can make a change until something like this happens or is brought to our attention, right?
right.
Or it really improves the quality of life choices that we make, right?
That is so true.
And we talk about choices. We have an opportunity to make choices before the inevitable happens,
right?
right?
We
So
do.
that's wonderful. Is there anything you want listeners to take home with them as they, go to work, as they live their lives? What wisdom you have experienced that you want to share with them?
Mm, there's so much. Where do I start? I think don't ignore death. Don't focus on it every day and become obsessed with it either. But keep in mind that we don't live forever.
Mhm.
And how do you want to live today so that you have a lot of tomorrows left? That's one. And then take time to think about what you want your own end of life to be like in terms of making some of those choices for your medical care, for who you want around, for what you want after you die. And that's another big piece. The families that their loved one has died but has made some of those choices. Do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? Do I want a green burial? Or at my funeral, I want it to be, you know, in the church, in the funeral home. I want these readings or these songs. Oh, it takes so much pressure off of people because we're in the midst of grief and it's hard
Right.
to, I keep saying, in the midst of the chaos, it's hard to make decisions.
I agree with you. As you were saying that, it reminded me of my mom.
Oh.
She wrote everything down, the hymns and, what story, Bible verses she want to be read and all that for us, right? And I remember when she gave me the draft to read, I felt some kind of way like, why now, stuff. But I kind of briefed through it because I was like, okay, this is important to her. So I read it and I didn't realize how much she was taking off our shoulders at that time. Yeah, so it was a beautiful gift.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you can always change it.
Well,
If I choose some of that now, 10 years from now, if I've found different hymns or a
right,
different piece of life has changed my perspective, go ahead and change it.
right.
But
And
do
these
it.
conversations need to take place in our families, right? In our homes and just be, make people more comfortable with the idea. When the time comes, then it's not so burdensome.
Right.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting when you're having this type of conversation, how time flies very quickly.
Doesn't
But
it?
one thing I want to ask you is how do people reach you? If any of the listeners want to connect with you and say, hey, can you help me with this? Maybe they're
Right.
going through a situation right now. How would they do that?
So my email is lee@coachrev.com. And my website is www.coachrev.com. They can learn lots about me there. And my phone number, because I always welcome calls and texts, 508-308-7116.
That's an easy number to remember. I would list all these in the information box so they can really retrieve it. But I wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with people reaching out to you if they had
Absolutely.
questions and stuff.
And there's no question that you shouldn't ask, even the little ones. Give me a call. Let's
Okay.
talk about it.
I view this conversation as very important. And, the other topic I talked about it was putting life in context, right?
Mm.
We have to put it, in its proper context, that it's it seems like we come to this earth and we have to live in this experience and journey. Some delightful, happy moments, some
Mhm.
not so delightful, happy moments.
Right.
But there's one thing none of us can escape. There'll come a day when we have to leave in some shape
Right.
or form. And that when we are ready with it and we have really done the homework in
Mhm.
understanding what it is, then it is not so difficult on us and our families and our loved ones and friends and families, right? Okay.
Yes.
So as we close, this is a women's platform,
Yeah.
and women do a lot of caretaking. We take care of our
Mhm.
kids, families, our parents, etc. And so this topic is really unique
Mhm.
in the sense that one way or the other, we all have some uh, part in it, right? And it probably may fall on us more than male partners or friends and
Yes.
family. So I want to bring this to the forefront as our mantra is being a woman of power and grace. And it doesn't have to be related to death or, you know, anything, but who is a woman of power and grace to you?
My dear friend Deborah. Deborah is someone I met many years ago through my work in hospice, a daughter of one of my patients that I served. And I think of Deborah now and her quiet grace and courage and strength as she cares for her husband who had a stroke. She continues to be an inspiration to me, even in the midst of heartache and life being turned upside down. Just still being that quiet grace is the word that keeps coming to mind
Mhm.
as she navigates this challenge in her life.
That is beautiful. I felt that, because, I also think that women, when we have an understanding of that inner space where we can go and tap into things, we are able to manage life well on the outside, right? The things happening around us seem to have a calm and beautiful effect in spite of its challenges.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you. And I'm hoping that our conversation sparked something for our listeners, and they will be able to come to terms with what death is about and begin, putting their ducks in a row, I would say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no expedient, it doesn't need to rush through it, but sitting with it and coming to a place of comfort. Mm,
That is so important.
yeah.
Coming to that place of comfort.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful talking to you.
You as well.